Good evening, everyone. I think we are ready to start today's meeting. Thank you all for joining Blue Sky. This is the free introduction lessons, or we call a presentation into the internship. Um, Blue Sky is one of the kind of mentorship and internship program that you cannot find anywhere. I've been honored to be mentoring for Blue Sky Citadel. I learned under the tutelage of Mr. Deji himself as well. And I'm happy to also present C# automation testing to the audience today. Some of you may not be testers, but you never know. Maybe you might switch your career after the presentation. So I welcome anyone who is on call, whether you're a Scrum Master, project manager, or any course that you've already enrolled. Okay, so I will move to the next slide. I'll be using few slides, but I'll be talking a lot around the topics that I have for today. So my full name is Kwame Inim Nyantichi, but lots of people can't pronounce that, so I tend to shorten it to Kwame Inim. I've been an automation tester for about 3 or 4 years, but I started as manual tester, and on my way to automation, I started with Java and I do C# as well. So I do both Java and C#. Currently, I'm using Java at work, but I'm happy to do the presentation with you today on C#. So as you know, the course will be starting from next week, but this is just a taster for you to have the decision to go into C#. Most times when people hear about C# automation or programming or coding, they feel like this is not for them. This is not their level. Programming is too late. They are too old to start. But anything in life, you need that determination to learn. It doesn't matter your age, whether you are young or whether you are old or middle age, you are still invited to learn C#. There are people who are fortunate and at the age of 50, 60, they were even able to use Python to learn coding. So it shouldn't be nothing new. I believe if you can use something as complex as a mobile phone, you can also learn automation. It's just having a different mindset and determination to learn it. So most of you will be thinking, well, I signed up for software testing. Why is this automation? Because when we hear of automation, the first thing that comes to our mind is artificial intelligence or AI or robotics and things like that. Yeah, it's partly true, but programming as a computer skill is there for you to automate daily tasks. So in software testing, we have two main broad divisions. We have the manual testing side and we have the automation side. But the trend for the last 10 years has been the need for more automation testers. The reason why we need more automation testers is that as companies grow, their test cases grows, and they need to automate in time to release to the customer. And doing manual processes or manual testing takes too much time, because what automation can run within 10 minutes, with manual testing, you might need days to run it. So most companies today need a lot of automation testers, or they use automation tools that are off the shelf. When we say off the shelf, that means that the companies have already made it like a bespoke way of installing the software into your system, writing some simple test case or doing a record and playback. But the disadvantage of those ones is that they are not very dynamic, most companies need people who understand coding, who understand programming, so that they can be dynamic with the language to automate. Because there are some complex applications that if you don't have the skill of programming, it becomes difficult using those off-the-shelf tools to program. Now, what we'll be doing with C# is mostly using another tool, what we call Selenium, in conjunction with C#. So when you hear of software automation, C#, we are not using just C#. We have a tool called Selenium. It's an open source. When we say open source, that means that it's not licensed. It's free on the market. You can download it and use it, and you don't have to pay for it. So we use Selenium in conjunction with C# programming language. The C# programming language comes from the C family from Microsoft. So Microsoft, as you know, is a powerhouse for IT. And Microsoft has its own languages. There have been so many programming languages, but Microsoft has its own programming languages like C, C++, and C#. But over the years, C# is the one that Microsoft is pioneering as their main tool. And when we come into testing automation, we have other programming languages you can use like Java, Python. Java has a large, I would say, hold in the market, but C# is also catching up with Python. So learning C# doesn't mean that you won't get a job in the market. There's lots of opportunities for you in the market to get automation job. So we'll come into it when we go into prospects into market and salary. But in the C# programming language, the similarities between that one and Java is not that different. So in Blue Sky Citadel, what we do is that for the first part of the year where we hold internship, we use the C# languages and Selenium to teach people how to automate. Then in the summer group, we use Java to teach people how to automate. So if you feel C# is not enough for you, and maybe the next internship, you want to sign up with Java, you are free to do so. But with C#, there's plenty of opportunity for you to do. Now, to come to the description of the role, as I mentioned, you have to see yourself as a tester, and you have to understand the basics of software testing. I've seen people who have just jumped into automation because they feel automation pay more and they don't understand the basics of testing. Automation is there just to make manual testing work, which is more cumbersome, less easy for testers in terms of running regression and other things. But if you don't know the concept of how to test, how to execute tests, how to raise bug, the fundamentals of testing, you'll hit a huge wall. So although you want to learn C# automation, I will plead with everybody on call and anybody who is listening on the web as well, that you need to get the foundation right. Learn your manual testing, and adding C# automation on top makes it much more easier because it's just executing your test case, but this time using automation tool or automation software to do it. Most times, the advantages of the C# automation or automation in general is that you are able to run your tests, whether in parallel or in the serial mode. You don't have to be by your decks. You can set them on server setup time that you want to run, whether it's midnight, daily. So you can do a lot of things whilst your test is running on pipelines and other things. But I know at this very stage, hearing some of these words might sound a bit confusing, but rest assured you are in the right hands. We will explain all those things for you. But the description of the role involves mainly automation of those regression test case, your smoke test pack, your end-to-end tests, your your tests that are that has high priority, your tests that are very risky as well. But somebody will ask the question, so do we have to automate everything? Or sometimes you may be in interview that is 100 automation possible. Automation, especially using C#, Selenium has its also limitation. So it's not everything that you can automate. So there are times when some companies feel like, okay, we are going 100% automation, but we cannot replace a human being. You still need automation, manual testing in some situation, because there are times where if you have to do end-to-end tests, or a test that involves different environments, you see that Selenium has that limitation of automating certain tasks. So there's still the need for manual testing. So don't think without automation you cannot get job. You can still get job as a manual tester. So with the overview of the role, is just a little bit like the description that I mentioned, that part of our work as software testers, we work with development team, and the development team are the main people who build application. Most times we refer to them as developers. Formerly they were called programmers, but today the modern term are called the developers. So we work with them when we have requirements, or in Agile, what we call stories, user stories. And whilst they are building the application, we are also writing our test cases hand in hand, and we run those test cases against the requirement or acceptance criteria. If we feel like any of the acceptance criteria are not met, we raise a defect or a bug to the developers for them to fix it. And once they fix it, they assign it back to us as testers. Then we retest it. But whilst we are retesting, there's a need sometimes for you to do what we call regression, because you can have an example where maybe you wrote 10 test cases for a login application. And as you were testing the login application, maybe it failed in one scenario of password, okay? But because it failed in one scenario as password, and you have different test cases, about, let's say, 8 of them, once the developer fixed that bug or that defect, you need to test the remaining 9. The reason why you have to test the remaining test cases is that in the world of the developer, they use logic to build application, and they have different what we call classes. For those who are going to do the automation, we will go into it. In programming, we have a term called classes. And as they are working on those programming code, they might mistakenly fix a bug which can in turn affect the other parts of the application. So when those bugs are fixed, you need to test the bug and the associate test cases. So if the login failed on one test case and has been fixed, you need to test the remaining test cases that has already passed, so that you check that those tests have not regressed. So when you hear the term regression, it's about testing whether those candidates of test cases that has already passed hasn't failed. And to do this is so difficult because you've already tested all those test cases. And just because one failed, you are going to test or retest all of them. And to do this, you need the help of automation to do it so that you wouldn't waste too much time on the application. So basically, that is the main overview of the role. I'll go to the next slide. In terms of title, some in the industry, some will use automation tester. They would like to refer to test engineer, QA engineer, SDET. So it would depend on what you want to call yourself after the internship. At the same time, see the internship as an experience. I don't want you to see it as you just learning and going to look for a job. See it as a work experience, because whatever you learn on Blue Sky Citadel, you have like projects, real projects that you are working on. The environment is just like working in any other place. So if you want to see yourself as automation tester, that's good. But whilst you are applying for job on any of the job recruitment portals like JobServe, Reed, Career, I've forgotten some of them. There are many of them, but we have Indeed.co.uk. For those who are in America or Nigeria, I don't know. But I know Indeed is more global, and JobServe is also global. But any recruitment site that you are applying, they might put the job out as QA engineer or test engineer, automation tester, or SDET. So any of this role, just go for it. Don't be afraid or think, oh, that is not above your level. But Blue Sky Citadel, we do our best to teach you to comprehend anything that you need. In terms of responsibilities, there are many. I tailored this into few bullet points. So one of the things that you need to know as a software tester, first and foremost, is to understand your projects. So all of you will have different project groups that you'll be joining, and each project group will be unique in terms of the project. So you need to understand what your project is about. If you don't understand what your project is about, or you don't understand immediately, it will slow you down, and you ask, how can I understand my project? You have to ask yourself questions. You have to ask also the team questions. Is one of the skills that you need in this industry, that anything that you feel you don't understand, don't keep it to yourself. It's best to ask. The more questions you ask, especially if you are new, it's better to ask a lot of questions than after 3 months, you ask some question and you'll be thinking, but you've been part of us for a while. Why are you asking this question? You know, everybody will be shocked. So try and ask a lot of questions. How do we do this? How do I do that? Google some of it. I think I will come to that. Some of the skills that you need. Also, some of the responsibility will include identifying business requirements in terms of the analyzing the requirements for the conditions which you need to test for your test cases. From manual point of view, you also need to know how to write test plan. So in some projects, you need to come up with a test plan or a test strategy. We will teach you all those things. But for automation, there are some companies that they need you to have automation strategy as well, whether you include C# automation with API using REST API and other things. So you need to know how to plan your automation as well. And also some have to include some things that can monitor applications in terms of the pipeline to see the results if the test run on Azure, or you are using TeamCity, or you are using Bamboo or Jenkins or whatever. They want to see how you monitor those applications. There's another tool that we use in conjunction with software testing, which is SpecFlow. So SpecFlow have something we call living documentation, which can also give you visual monitoring of all your test cases that you run and pass as well. So we'll come into it later on when I talk about SpecFlow in terms of some of the tools you use. Some of your responsibility include writing and executing tests script. Technically, we like to call those tests that you run using program as test scripts. Your responsibility as a tester again include running your tests in different environments. There are some companies that they want you to run your automation test suite on development environments, test environments, or any other environment that they have, but you don't have to run on live environment. So be warned, don't run on production environment, but on the lower environment, you want to run to check that nothing has broken and the developers can deploy to that particular environment. You also have to know how to write bug reports or raise bugs. We'll teach you how to use that using Azure DevOps and maybe probably Jira. So you have the best of both worlds. Also reviewing documentation. I think I've mentioned that at the beginning. Reviewing documentation in terms of requirements. Over here, in most agile companies, because they use software tools like Jira and Azure and Rally, most of the documentation are in the project tool that they are using. So if they have wireframes and other things that are attached from the UI UX team or developers or from the business analysts, you review those documentation, estimate it with the developers. You also have to work towards project deadlines, and also this is last but not the least, provide quality assurance. I cannot overemphasize how much you need quality assurance. Most times we go into software testing thinking, oh, I want to change career. But your longevity in the career would depend on how you see quality assurance, because in some companies, they will refer to you as quality assurance tester. The reason because you are there to test the product to provide or ensure that the product that is going to the customer, that the customer is going to use, is of the standard that the customer wants or what the business owners want. So you are there as a gatekeeper to make sure that there's quality in the software. You can imagine most companies have collapsed because quality was overlooked. In those days, they would only hire developers. They wouldn't hire testers. And most companies who risked not having testers, they had to pay a great deal because their company collapsed because maybe they had data issue or loss of data and other things that if a tester was there could have prevented it. So it's part of the foundation lessons that you learn about software testing. What can what can the role do, or what what can do the role, the skills that you need, who you can work as. In terms of skills, you you need to have a quality eye for things. You need to um, also be diplomatic um, in terms of working with developers, because we are not there to look down upon their work. Because anytime you raise a bug, you make the developers work feel like they don't know what they are doing or whatever. We are not there to look down on their work and show that, okay, we know better than them. But so you need that diplomatic skill. You need the skill to you need the skill to um, learn as well on the job, because as a new software tester that who wants to, because at the moment our industry is expanding. When I say expanding, we is cutting across different sectors of the economy. So I've seen jobs that are not only for like telecom industry, but in the banking industry, or we call them fintech. They need testers. In the insurance industry, they need testers, software testers. In mobile telecoms industry, they need testers. So many, you can't think of it. Retail, Nest, and how do we call it? Sainsbury's and all those companies, they need software testers because of the applications that they are using, because IT has become part or the fabric of the economy. So you need to gain understanding in different um, sectors of the economy and what those things mean to your work. So it's very important. Yeah. So um, over here, I wrote some of your expectation and what you need to be successful in the role. Determination. I believe one of the skills that made you to sign up to Blue Sky Citadel is determination, and you have to keep that fire burning in terms of your goals. Maybe your 2023 goals is that maybe you want to change your career, you want to upskill. Um, so you were ready to sign up to this training. So let that determination keep you aspiring to be an automation tester. Some of you, maybe you were already a manual tester, but you can see your company needs um, automation testers and you want to upscale to that level. Let that determination drive you to learn and be successful in the role. Your ability to learn, when I say ability to learn, um, most times we all don't have time because we are busy most of the time, but creating time for yourself, um, and associating yourself with things that are in your career path helps a lot. So um, if you know you want to be a software tester and you go on YouTube 7 days a week and you don't listen to anything to do with software testing, I don't think that is your career path. But if you really want to accelerate in terms of your career path, associate yourself with those things that will help you to learn, So that ability to learn is very important. Also, learning on the job itself is also important because when you start in any company, the company may have established 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years. It's up to you to keep up to those documentation that they have on their wiki pages or Confluence pages, so that you can learn on the job as well. And whilst you're on the job, you have to upskill on other skills that you need that you think will be relevant. I wrote here a funny one that is Googling skills, because sometimes you you find yourself in what I would say no man's land, where due to working from home, sometimes you may get jobs where they will tell you it's hybrid or remote. When you say hybrid, that means you get the opportunity to stay home and work some of the days, and um, some of the days you have to come to the office. Um, when it's remote, that means you have to work from home. The challenge, it has advantages and challenges. The challenges is that you don't get to work with your team as in physical office. So when you need help, sometimes you can message a member on Teams or whatever tool you use for communicating at work, and it takes a long time for somebody to respond. But within that time, if you can Google what you need to know about, because I've seen developers with textbook next to them, next to their decks, that sometimes they have to refer to certain things, because there are times when companies also want to progress on certain things, how to do certain things that if you are also learning on the job, you need to research and find out how best you can do. So you need to know how to use Google very well. It's a skill that you need. It makes you successful. So Googling is about your role and what you need to do, especially with C# automation. You will face a lot of challenges, and I always tell my trainees that you are like a programmer where you are building application, and part of it will be 50% building the application and maybe 50% solving issues. So when you are learning programming language, especially if you are new, you hit the wall so many times where the application will fail, it will not run, or whilst you are typing, you can make a lot of syntax errors and the application will not build. But because you are new and you don't know where to turn to, it's best to Google, or we have what we call Stack. You use some of the Stack trays on, there's one popular site that when you Google, it will come up. Can't remember the name now, but those things helps you because you see people have had the same issues over the years, and maybe they put it online that this is how they were able to solve it, because you will need it, especially in automation programming. There will be so many challenges that you face. Sometimes the application will refuse to run. It may run this morning, but in the afternoon, it will just refuse to run. And you need that patience as well. So I think patience is one of the skills you need to be successful, and perseverance, so that you don't give up when you face those challenges, because it will come whilst you are learning C# automation. So take it like you've gone to another country and you want to learn their language, whether maybe they are speaking French or they are speaking German. Initially, you don't understand the language and you want to express yourself. The things you want to say, you know what you want to say, but it's not the right words that you are using. So you may get a different direction or maybe different interpretation based on what you want. But your determination to stay focused within that team helps. Now, I added sharing and collaboration. It works hand in hand. Sharing in the sense that I see that people who progress quickly, and I also advise people to be mentees and things like that, is when you share, it helps you to learn quicker. What takes people a year or two, if you share what you have, you progress quickly. because in the industry, especially developers, they work as a unit because they help each other. And because of that, it helps them to learn. So they have those community of practice where they have their own blocks and things like that that they share a lot. So you need to help other people when they ask for help. Um, as little as it can be, as you help other people, it makes you to learn, it makes you a better person. And also collaboration, that means working with people in programming world, we call them like pair programming and things like that, where you can challenge yourself with someone to work on an automation project or maybe on a coding project. So that collaboration helps a lot, because sometimes I've seen senior developers who um, just a simple slash can redirect a server, and they might be fixing this issue and it might take days. But somebody comes to the scene and says, "Oh, I see, it's just this slash that you missed," and it turns the whole thing around. So helping each other, collaboration, it helps. If you really want to enjoy coding and C# and automation, you will need those skills. In terms of tools, I didn't list all of them, but you don't need that much. Basically, you need a laptop, or maybe if it's a PC desktop or a Mac. So what we do with C# is that because most times most companies use Windows, you are likely to have PC laptop at your workplace to send. Sometimes they will send it to you if you are working from home. But it depends. Sometimes if you're a contractor, they might ask you to use your own laptop. So I've seen people who have used C# to do Mac computers as well. But because C# is a Microsoft language, if you use Windows, things take faster than using OS, Apple iOS applications. So you can have Mac and you can use it, but to me, if you are new, my advice is better use PC or Windows laptop. It makes things much easier. But if you feel you are in the Apple ecosystem and you enjoy using Mac, the application look and feel will be different if you are using Mac, but it will still do the same thing. But to me, because you are learning and you want to flow faster, it's better to use Mac, but the choice is up to you. One of the main tools that we use is Visual Studio Community Edition. At workplaces, you may have the professional, they have the enterprise version as well. But at workplace, if they sign you on your company, you are likely to use the professional. The difference is not that much, just that the professional they get updates quicker and few things to do with ReSharper and other things. But just using the community edition for learning, and you'll be fine to code any complicated automation that you want, from simple to complicated. You can do it with the community version. Now, when we come to the C# automation, you can also use SpecFlow if you are using what we call behavior driven development. So we have some companies who haven't got to the level of BDD. You will not need the SpecFlow tool. So the SpecFlow tool is a third-party application that helps you to bind. Well, if I use bind in quotes, so in BDD, we write our tests or features in an application or in scenarios form where we use given, when, then. Now, when you write your scenarios in given, when, then, and you have the SpecFlow installed, what it does is that it translates that given, when, then into a C# code. And that translation is what we call binding. and SpecFlow helps you to do it very well. And over the years, SpecFlow has improved. They've added SpecFlow Run, they've added SpecFlow Living Documentation, and other things that has improved the automation in C Sharp. So that is one of the two you have to use. So all these things are free apart from your own laptop that you have to use. Now to the laptop, it's important to note that you need a minimum spec that will help you to code and enjoy coding. The minimum spec, I didn't write it down, but I'll say it out of my head. At least you should have a processor that is, if it's Intel, have Intel i5. Okay. In terms of RAM, at least 8 gig. I would advise 16 gig, but if it's 8 gig, it's fine. In terms of the SSD, that is the solid state hard drive, the basic laptop that is around 500 will come with 512 SSD hard drive. And in terms of core, if it's Intel, it will be 4 cores for i5. That is the minimum you need. If it's AMD, you need maybe 4 cores or six core in terms of processor. The reason why I'm saying this is that when you run your automation, it's going to put demand on resources on the computer. So your application, which is the Visual Studio, is going to, using Selenium, is going to open a browser, whether it's Google Chrome, Firefox, or Edge. It's going to open that browser and it will run your test as if a human being is using the application. And the often that you do it and it places resource on your computer, if your computer doesn't have this minimum spec, it will slow you down. And when it slow you down, what will happen is that you have a lot of false failures, okay? And you end up writing a lot of what we call weight, implicit or explicit, especially explicit weight. And all those things is not good for a good automation because of the laptop. Again, when your laptop is slow, loading application and doing things will not make you enjoy coding, because even if you have to do a presentation, your whole team is waiting for you and your laptop is not loading, it's just annoying and you just wouldn't love coding. So let this minimum spec be in your mind. It doesn't matter any brand that you want to use, as long as the spec is i5 for Intel or AMD Ryzen 5, 512 solid state hard drive, a minimum of 4 cores. But if you can get more than 4 cores, is great. Then you need a RAM of 16 gig or 8 gig minimum. So check your laptops if it has that. If you want to check, you can type computer management to your window icon on your taskbar, and it'll give you all the spec on your computer. I'm not sure about Mac, but if you can check the spec that you need, it will help you a lot and it won't slow you down. And I'm saying this out of experience as well, because before I started with Blue Sky Citadel, my laptop, it can take 30 minutes to load, and it didn't make me enjoy coding. So that's a good advice that you have to please pay attention. Yeah. So it says what does the role aligns with? Because we are in the software environment, most times we align ourselves with the software development life cycle. And in the software development life cycle, we work with business analysts and the developers. So with the aim of developing the application. So over here, I wrote here in terms of and development of the application. Also, what automation help is that um, it creates that culture where we can continuously release things into production. Unlike if you are in um, if you are doing waterfall, or you are in a waterfall environment, but in agile scrum, where there's frequent releases, especially 2 weeks releases, sometimes within the week, some will try to release application once it's completed, because they create different pipelines. When I say pipeline, let the idea of how they have water pipes that runs on the street or ground in your mind. You know, when it gets to a community, it goes to different houses. Okay, it has the main pipe or the main line, then it goes to different. The same way, the developers will create a main branch, but they can have different branches so that they can release things faster. So if they finish with one side of the application that they want to release to the environment for it to be tested, they can deploy to that particular environment so that it can be tested. So in this in mind, it comes with the culture of DevOps, where developers and operation teams comes together in terms of state of the art release um, of products into the development environment. So learning C# automation helps you to also build your code, so that immediately developers deploy the code to that environment, your test will also be triggered to run against the environment in terms of smoke tests. And this is important because part of the programming you are going to learn for Selenium testing, you're going to learn what we call Git. And the purpose of learning Git is because you're going to learn what we call versioning. And everything that you do will not reside on your computer if you have GitHub, or your company will have their server. So whether you are using Bitbucket or you are using Azure repos, you are going to use your code to also build your own pipeline for the test team, so that in the workplace, if the developer says that, okay, we finished with our tests, we are going to deploy to test environment, your test will also learn. So one other skill that you learn alongside C# automation is how to do version control using Git, which is also popular among the developers, and it helps with this DevOps releases and pipelines. Um, Now, average salary. I know when it gets to this level, people people wants to know. So I put salary scale UK. Um, because we are running it from UK, but I believe there are a lot of people across the world who have heard about Blue Sky Citadel, and they've been part of the program, and it has been successful to them. So I will try and give an idea of how some continents pay. But starting with UK, salary, this is the average salary. When I say that average salary, I believe most of you understand what I mean. So most companies will advertise for automation tester around 45K to 55K. The K means 55,000. That is for permanent role. So the perm there means permanent role. And for contracting, it's around 250 per day to maybe 500 per day. The salary scale is dependent on the company that you are going to work in. So we have different sectors. The sectors that pay more than this average tend to be the fintech industry most times, or companies that deals with investment, stocks, brokers, and those things, because they deal with a lot of money and they have the money. So they can pay, and it's good for them to pay well. So if that is where you want to prosper, you can aim the fintech industry, but it will still depend on your experience, because if they are paying you a permanent salary of 95, it means maybe because they are looking for someone with maybe 5 years experience, at least 5 to 10 years experience, before they can pay you that salary, and the interview process as well. Sometimes it may include test lead activities. So it depends on your role and the industry that you are going in. But the average industry will pay 45. Again, this salary scale is dependent on wherever you are in UK. So this 45 to 55K is likely to be within the greater London area, Cambridge area, then Oxford and Manchester. This is where we have a lot of tech hub. So then within the Reading area, they tend to pay around this. But outside of that, they might pay 35. The average will be around 35 for automation. But the demand of automation is high at the moment in the industry. The same with the salary. Some can pay more than that, but this is the average salary. Now, but apart from UK, those in America, America has a lot of IT companies, and because of the competition there, the minimum normally they pay, the average pay scale is between 90,000 US dollars to maybe 120,000 US dollars. So they go into the 6-figure salary. The reason, because they have the Google, they have the Facebook, they have the Microsoft, they have the Dell. So if you don't pay them well, they'll go to the next company. So the competition there is high. Apart from America, the next is Canada. They also pay high. So for those in Canada, their salary for IT is really high, and software testing as well. Then we have the USA, Australia. Then when it comes to Europe, Switzerland and some of the Scandinavia countries, they can pay well, Germany as well. But Europe too, they are around the same threshold of average salary of 45,000 euros or more. So that is the average salary. I think this comes to the end of the session. So I'll give room for question time if anyone has any questions.